Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Ambarian. I'm one of the founders of Promomash. And welcome to the webinar. Please, if you are in the audience, send us a quick note in the chat saying, hey, tell us who you are, where you're from. Pretty much, we're pretty good at Promomash about targeting our messages and our content and our audience list. And today's webinar is pretty much for the top executives. Most of you on the call are CEOs and founders and their top executive teams, and that's exactly the audience that we want for the great content that we have today. You guys probably already know that we delight in bringing you the barrage of fresh ideas for how to do things that stand out from the average performance of the industry. So as I said, we're bringing you something targeted just for you today. But first, I'd like to give you a quick wake-up call. A lot of us, as entrepreneurs, we get into starting a company or running a company because we're super into our product or our particular super skill, which is great, and that's kind of the artistry part of it. Everybody likes to think of themselves at the top of a company as the artist, you know, kind of leading the charge. And then on the other hand, there's the sort of quant side of things where you have a lot of technical skill and whatnot. That tends not to lead companies very well, but it's actually super important. You have to have both, and if you do the quant part really well, it also becomes artistry, and it also allows you to lead a company, and that's kind of where we're headed. And so the way that CPG has evolved, in my view, a C-level cannot ignore what we're about to talk about, and that subject is revenue management. And we've got a quick poll just to see, do you even know what revenue management is? Is that a thing? What is it? How does it work? Do you already know that? And so I just to kick things off, we'd love to know, just, hey, how familiar are you with revenue management? Just as a question, so that we can size up and tailor our conversation, because this is a conversation. There's some sort of structure to it, but this is not a canned presentation. We'll have Q&A and back and forth toward the end. But we'd love to know, hey, how familiar are you? And on that note, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to our special guest today. His name is Avy Punwasee, and he is the CEO of Revenue Management Labs. So all about revenue management. We had the pleasure to meet fairly recently and have become quick friends. And he is absolutely an expert on the subject, and I'm really excited to have him with us today so that he can share with you everything about revenue management.
Great.
So, Angela, if you can take it away, Avy, and if you can take that poll off the screen, then we'll be go.
Awesome. I want to thank the Promomash team for having me today and to share a little bit about revenue management. And we're going to jump right into it here. I'm going to just bring up the presentation. So in line with exactly what Chris was starting with, what is revenue management? And I know we ran a poll, but often, from emerging brands to really mature companies that we go in and we ask, what is revenue management? You wouldn't believe the diversity of answers that we get. And what are some of the typical ones that we hear? Well, sometimes we hear, it's accounting. We just got to figure out what we're accounting for. Let's account for the revenue properly. And that's revenue management. Other times we hear it's financial modeling. We need to look at what's happening in terms of our demand forecasting and whatnot. And then we're going to figure out how we manage our revenue. Other times it's budgeting. We just need to get our budget right. We'll know what's going on with our revenue from a top line basis. And there we go. I just need to have the right sales targets, and that's going to manage me into the revenue that I want to get to. Sometimes from accounting or finance, we get, you know what, it's activity-based costing. We need to figure out how much the cost is on things that we're anticipating, and that's going to help dictate what we need to plan from a revenue perspective. And then the last one is, you know what, it's what the airlines and hotels do. They do revenue management and they end up overcharging me. You know, now might not be the time that we're actually seeing that. There are probably some great deals to be had out there. But these are kind of the typical 6 that we hear. It's very kind of financially focused, very accounting focused, budget focused. But do any of these really hit on the head of what is revenue management at the end of the day? What we like, and none of these really do, what we like to do is simplify it. And what we want you to think of is just a simple lemonade stand. What you'd see at the end of your driveway as you're walking through your community, selling lemonade. And we think about, okay, we're going to set up a lemonade stand and we're going to run this business. As we think about setting up a lemonade stand, we want to think about, well, what are the decisions we need to make to run this lemonade stand? So we start thinking about, okay, what should our price be? How many flavors should we have? Do we need to have various sizes of sizes there? What should our hours be on how we're running? Should we provide any types of discounts? Should we have a loyalty program? How should we start to communicate our offers? All of a sudden, this really simple venture of running a lemonade stand has gotten very, very complex. And I can imagine the complexity with the brands that you're dealing with, just the increased degree of complexity. Now, if we think about revenue management, what is revenue management? It's really 2 things. One, it's thinking about the answers to all of these questions and how we answer all these questions. But when we answer these questions, we're answering in a way that our top line and our bottom line are maximized. And that really encompasses, we're covering off 4 main bases. That you'll find that all these questions really fall under 4 main key areas. The first one is price. And when I say price, we're thinking about, where are we positioning our product against competition? And when we think about competition, we're thinking about not only competitors that are outside of us, but also competition within our portfolio. As a customer comes to us and they're looking at all of our offers, how do we need to position that price to make sure the trade-offs make sense? The second big bucket is volume investments. And what we're thinking about here is really, when we're investing into a customer or we're investing on our product to move more volume, what is the ROI associated with that volume investment? What's the best way that we can spend those dollars to generate incremental loyalty, to generate incremental volume that translates to bottom line improvement? Next, product mix. And this is really around looking at the offers that we sell and thinking about, is there things that we can do to go ahead and encourage volume to move in different directions? So if we know we have products that we make higher margin on, if we know that we have customers that we do better with, if we know there are certain regions that we have a higher price point that we're able to command, how do we think about driving the business in that direction to build our top and bottom line? And then the last element is having all these strategies, or having our eyes on what we need to do. How do we go and get those executed in the market with our customers at the end of the day? How do we have the right selling stories? How do we execute price increases? How do we communicate our value? So what revenue management is, it's covering off these 4 buckets. And I'm going to boil this even more simple. Simply defined, what you're going to hear is that revenue management is selling the right offer to the right customer at the right time for the right price. Now, you'll notice that there's a lot of rights that I keep on kind of focusing on. And what's that mean to you? As we talk about right offer, we're talking about things like your product. Do you have the right product, your quality, your package, your brand? As we're thinking about the customer, you're thinking about the retailers, you're thinking about those consumers that you're going after with those certain products. As we're thinking about time, we're thinking about the duration that you're putting offers out there. We're thinking about the frequency that you're putting offers out there in the market, the season that you're offering certain things or that you're actually piloting certain elements. And then of course the right price. But all of these elements need to come together so you're managing both your top line and your bottom line, so you're maximizing that equation. And simply stated, this is what the practice of revenue management is. Now, this isn't necessarily something that gets taught in school. It's not like a typical function like marketing or finance or accounting. So I wanted to give you a quick background on how I dropped into it. And that was really at the start of 2005. So I'm going to really age myself here and go back. And let's think about where we were in 2005. George Bush just elected to his second term. The Kyoto Protocol was signed. This was his first kick the can on it. They wanted to decrease emissions by 50%. We know where that kind of ended up. YouTube was founded. The Supreme Court actually ruled that medical marijuana could be prosecuted under as a federal drug law violation. We know we're in a much different spot right now. Nokia and Motorola are vying for top spot in the cell phone market, which is kind of scary when you think about where we are right now. And I graduated with my MBA, and so I was fresh out of school. And I ended up at Ford Motor Company. So just really quickly on Ford Motor, huge company, really run by finance people, incredibly highly structured, heavily process focused, gifted people, very clearly outlined roles and responsibilities. As I think about where you're sitting now, probably working within emerging brands, just starting out, you don't have all this structure in place. So definitely not the same environment that you're probably more so flying the plane and trying to build it at the same time. Second piece, I moved into Ford customer service. So this was all around parts and service. And I moved into a parts pricing manager role. So this was kind of the ugly stepchild of the vehicle business. The nice new vehicles get sold out front, the ugly parts in the back. But what I was stepping into was 340,000 SKUs, 300 product lines. So as you can imagine, I'm sure now your heads are nodding a little bit that this is the kind of complexity that you guys are dealing with day after day. Not necessarily that you have as many SKUs, but if you think about the amount of retailers that you're dealing with, the amount of stores, the amount of planograms, the amount of activations that you're putting in place, the amount of trade deals, that you're setting a price in some cases by week, a ton of complexity that you're running into. But what was their kind of play? And when I got there, it was very clear that you need to work the formula. And what the formula is you look at what's happening with supplier cost into us. You look at what's happening with freight costs out there in the market. And you look at what's happening with underlying commodities. And look at how your costs move. And very simply, we bake a margin on top of this. We might have some differentiated margins, but this will dictate what our price is in the market. So very clear cost plus pricing. And the majority of newer CPGs that we deal with, this is at its crux. There's some competitive overlays, but a lot of times this is the crux of how the pricing is being done. We're defending a margin basis. Now, where did that kind of leave me? Stepping in again with my MBA, I dropped into this. I was finding that we were dealing with a lot of external complaints. We had a dealer council, we had a portal. The dealers were complaining that prices were too high out there. So as we think about your business and where you're getting your external complaints, this is kind of the pushback that you get from either retailer requests that are looking for something from you, or salespeople telling you, hey, if we go out at this level, or if we do this, we're putting the business at risk. We're not going to be able to grow as much as we would like to. And internally, it felt like a war. And I felt like I was in the middle of it, honestly, because everyone had a different perspective on how we should price. Finance was clear. I can do math, just increase the price. Continue to increase price, we will make more money. Sales, a little bit of a different perspective. If we can go ahead and lower the price there, we can sell much more. Do you want to count very slow dollars, or do you want to count quick dimes? Operations, if we're long, you guys need to go ahead and lower that price. If we're short, you guys need to increase that price to manage the demand. So very ancillarily focused. And then the last is marketing. We spend so much time building all this value into the product, understanding the customer. You don't need to monkey around with price. All we need to do is go out there and tell our story, sell our what we're bringing to customers at the end of the day. So this is what makes it tough, is that often it's ruled by emotion, and everyone has a different opinion of how to go ahead and get at it. Now, I'd imagine in a lot of emerging brands, it's the same feeling. There's the process isn't there, loudest voice is carrying the day, and if we look at decisions that are made one day to the other, it's not necessarily consistent. So, knowing I was in this war zone, what did I do? Well, I wanted to be a hero. So I wanted to try to get as many quick wins as I could under my belt fast. And how did I try to do that? Well, let's go ahead and follow competition. I'm going to go get the competitive prices. If they move price, I'm going to move price. I'm going to look at all my low margin products. Anything that's low margin, I'm going to go ahead and take my price up so I can get right size all my margins that I'm making within the portfolio. I'm going to look at products that I have tons of inventory on. I'm going to price those down. So start to get the velocity moving. I'm going to look at stuff that's longer in the tooth. I'm going to take price on those. But it's a lot of tactical actions. And as you think about your business being an emerging brand, we're thinking about things like, okay, we've got a priority. We're going to get this to 60% distribution. We're going to run BOGOs on this for the Christmas season. We're going to transition to paying on, move from paying on ships to paying on scans. That these kind of priorities. The problem is that they're tactics. There were a lot of quick hit tactics, and they didn't necessarily result in driving us forward in terms of getting us to our priorities or seeing those real end results on how do we build our share, how do we build our revenue, how do we build our profit at the end of the day in a sustainable manner. So with all this frustration, so much effort, shooting in multiple directions, not necessarily seeing the results of where we're going, where we move towards. We kind of came to this eureka moment that we were spending a lot of time navel gazing. Everything that we were talking about was looking at our internal operations. How much does freight cost? What's going on from this product cost? How are we shipping this? And we were looking at how does that translate to what's going on in the market? Well, it's totally disjoint. We know if you're focusing on costs, you're ignoring the inherent value of your product, because where's the inherent value of your product? It's what the customer sees at the end of the day and the trade-offs they make. We know that if we're just following competition at the end of the day, well, there's nothing to say that competition's doing it better than us. Also, we don't know analytically where we should be positioning ourselves versus competition. So our price, we're never where we should be. So we're always leaving money on the table. And the problem with this is being so insularly focused, it's always reactive, and we can never drive a strategy. We can never say, hey, if I pull this lever, here is what's going to happen from a share perspective. Here's what's going to happen from a revenue perspective. Here's what's going to happen from a profit perspective. So knowing that looking at our navel wasn't necessarily driving results, where do we need to go? How did we need to transition? And that's where the revenue management process really helped us to move away from looking internally and transition to looking externally and looking beyond what's just happening within our walls. And there's a real process to this, and I'm going to step you through somewhat. And the first step is thinking about what customer segments are out there in the market that we're servicing. So when we go in and typically say what customer segments, emerging CPG will say, you know what, I've got convenience, I've got drug, I've got mass, I've got club. That's not necessarily a customer segment. When we're thinking about a customer segment, we're thinking about the actual customer to the consumer themselves, or behavioral. So what's their purchase frequency or usage? So are they stocking up on this weekly? What's the occasion? Are they only going and buying this product when there's a family get together, or they're going to a barbecue, versus is it something different? What's the benefit that they're trying to get behind this product? So for example, and this is a really simple example, we have some people who will never buy coffee from Dunkin' Donuts because they want to interact with a barista. What's the loyalty around the customer that we're dealing with? Now, what we're trying to do, you don't need to know all of these things, determine all these things analytically, or you don't need to run a big study. But at the end of the day, you need to have at least an idea of these are the segments of the customers that are in the market. The next thing, and these customer segments, you're doing it from two manners. You're thinking about from channel, retailer, and also consumer. Once you have those segments, you need to identify what are the segments that we need to win in that are critical to us, because these are going to start setting up your anchor. From there, you're transitioning into these being our priority segments. What are the key things that these customers value? And as we think about value, we want to think about differential value. And differential value is kind of important because often when we go into, and this is with any CPG, we go in and we say, all right, with your product, what's important to a customer? And we will invariably get a list of 16 things. We're talking about detergent, and we'll get a list of 16 things. Well, when a customer goes to shelf, they can't, it's even confusing enough trying to figure out how to get up in the morning and get to work. They don't have 16 things when they're thinking about buying detergent. There is really 2, 3, 4 things that they're balancing as they're choosing between your brand and another brand. What are those key differential value driving elements? Having your eye on those is critical. The next element, once you have your eye on those, who are our key competitors? And it's not often, again, when we ask this question, we'll get kind of, here's the laundry list of competitors that we have. Again, customers have a hard time trading between competitors. They're not going to look at a laundry list of 5 competitors out there. There's kind of a core set of 3 or 4, and that core set of 3 or 4 might differ by the segment. So again, this is really critical to understand what are the segments that you are going after and looking at it from that customer's lens, that customer's journey. Once you have that clarified, who are the competitors we're going against, what's the value differentials, we simply score, understand where we're positioned against them, and then make sure that our offer fits, our pricing, our discounting, our product. And this is going to kind of get us to the maximizing that revenue and profit. Now, what's kind of the eureka out of that? Everything that I just kind of talked about in that entire process is that it all starts and finishes with the customer. That you're not necessarily looking at cost and your cost dictating whether you're in business or not. You're looking at the customer. The customer's telling you, for this type of offer, this is what I'm willing to pay. And the customer is dictating whether you're in business or not on that product or on that item. So it's really dictating where you need to focus your bets and how you're going to go after it. I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to take us back to Economics 101 here, but we're looking at a graph here. I've got volume across the vertical axis. I've got price across the horizontal axis, and this is the demand line. So basically, as our price goes up, our volumes going down. Now, if we have one price in the market, it's just going to be a dot on this line. This purple or gray box, this represents the revenue that you're going to make. As we sit back and we think about, okay, what's my opportunity in the market? Well, our opportunity in the market is all of this white space that is under this line. If we're able to go ahead and capture more of this white space, we get more revenue at the end of the day and we get more profit. So all that revenue management is we're talking about the right customer, right offer. We're trying to capture more of this white space. So if we were able to have a lower priced offer, you can see that we're taking a bit more of that white space. If we have kind of the mid-tier offer, we have a premium offer out there, we're capturing more and more of the white space. And of course, as we're moving to more premium offers, we're going, our cost on those elements are going up too, because we're delivering a more premium experience to the customer. Couple things to keep in mind here as you're looking at this. I know I was using the word offer, but each of these dots along the line, they should represent a different customer segment, a unique customer with unique needs. We're bringing a unique offer to them at a unique price point, and of course, with a unique kind of promotion activation too that we're getting to them. So it needs to start and finish with the customer. So as we present to the customer's making the trade-off. As well, what's kind of critical, I know is when I was talking to all those customer segments that are in the market, you might be saying as an emerging brand, you know what, I don't play in all those. What's important, and as you look at this, you might say, you know what, I only play in segment number 3. What's critical is you need to have that clarity of vision, because if you know that you only play in segment number 3, it's going to help you a lot as you're setting pricing and discounting guidelines to make sure that you're fulfilling the promise to segment number 3, and making sure that you're not trying to take your segment 3 offer and position it to segment 1 here that's looking for more of a value-based offer, and you're having to activate to a certain price that doesn't necessarily make sense for what you're trying to achieve in the market. But having a gear on this and seeing how much of the revenue you're going after is absolutely critical. How do we think about this? I'm going to just take a couple of examples. Coca-Cola, it's the exact same liquid across all these package types, but they've got all these package types out there. The most frequent is kind of the 2-liter that everyone would be familiar with. This is kind of your stock up SKU, and you can see it's the lowest price per serving that you're going to see out there. Likewise, I go a little bit to the left, the 6x500, and drastically higher price point out of it. But what's different here? And this is where we're getting back to customer segments and how we're positioning. Well, this is for a different occasion, right? It's got some functional benefits to the pack. It is for individual consumption, but we can share it. And what we want to think about is, as we're positioning that, well, how are we activating this from a price and discount perspective, but also where are we placing this? How are we merchandising it? Which retailers and which placement do we want to have this in? So all this is, at the end of the day, is really Coca-Cola going and getting more of that white space and thinking about how to create those customer segments and satisfy those needs where the dollars and cents makes sense. Likewise, iPads. You can get an iPad anywhere from $399 to $799. I know this price has graduated up since then. Now, anyone who wants to interact with the brand can, but they need to make trade-offs. What do they need to make trade-offs based off of? The speed, the size of the unit, the speed of the chip in it, the compatibility of the unit. Just to cement this in your mind as you're thinking about, how should I think about segments? How should we be thinking about moving forward on this? Now, what does this mean for you as a CPG? Now, the customer proposition is going to dictate how you're going to market. It's going to tell you what's possible, what's not possible. And your segments that you play in are going to give you that strategic clarity. If you don't have that strategic clarity, some of the reasons that you'll know that you don't have those strategic clarity is you're going to see yourself, you're going to be investing in promotions that don't generate incremental lift. You're going to be at risk that when your sales team comes into you and they say, hey, a retailer is demanding this, and if we don't pay it, we will not get listed, or we will not get this activity. We're going to be acquiescing to those retailer requests. We're going to have unclear channel price architecture. So, for example, let's say the first place we go ahead and get placement on our product is in a retailer like Whole Foods. And we go ahead, and since it's our first account and we took down one or two of their regions, we gave them a relatively aggressive deal because we wanted to show that we can build up velocity and we can build our way to the entire Whole Foods network. Year 3, we get an opportunity with Kroger. And we're looking at, hey, what we did in Whole Foods for a 42 margin to position Kroger pricing where it needs to be positioned versus Whole Foods. We're going to be at like a 28 margin. And after we look at our costs and our overhead, you know, this is kind of break-even business. Forget about what happens when we want to go into club or what happens when we go into Walmart. We're putting handcuffs on ourselves because we didn't have that strategic clarity about setting up the blueprint. But at the end of the day, there's only a fixed pool of money to invest. And if we don't have that clarity and we're not able to understand those trade-offs for the segment of customer that we're going after, you're going to find that you're burning it in a lot of areas that you wouldn't expect. So what's the end output of this, and how do we know this is happening? This is just Nielsen data, and it's a fact that globally 60% of promotions don't make money. 70% plus of promotions in the US don't even break even. And this is accounting for, you know, we've got the trial and customers coming back. 70% of those won't break even. What's the problem with this? Knowing that 70% of these don't break even, are you going to be able to walk away from them? No, you're not going to be able to walk away from promotions. Because why? Retailers, well, they know that's an effective way for them to build brand or importance. They know that in some cases they're looking at your product as a traffic driver, so they're going to continue to push on these. But can you get smarter around them? Definitely. Now, you might be saying, this is a lot of work and this is complicated. We've got a good product, we're kind of putting it out there, and things are kind of going well. Do I really need to pay attention to this? Is it important at the end of the day that I have to get my hands around this? How should I be thinking about it? This is just an average financial statement. Don't worry about the scale of this financial statement. More so just for illustration and what I'm going to walk you through. I totally encourage you to go through this exact same exercise with your financial statements. Just the average S&P 500 company to explain it. But basically 1.1 million units sold. We're selling a unit for about $5,700. Our gross revenue is about 6.5 million. We have about 13% worth of discounts. So a net revenue of about 5.3 million. About 36% cost of goods sold, which is about 1.7. So we've got a gross margin of about 3.6. Fixed costs of about 2.4. So we're taking a profit about about 1,300 or about 19.6% profit margin. We sit back and we think about what are the levers that I can pull on this financial statement to drive value. One of the first areas that, and I'm sure you spent a lot of time looking at, is how do we drive cost out of the system? How do I ship more efficiently? How do I procure more efficiently? How do I build efficiency in my production processes? So if we're able to drive 1% of costs out of the system, we take our cost of goods sold down by 1%. We're still making the same on the top line. It basically drops to the bottom line. We go from 1268 to 1285, where we improve to about a 19.8%, which is about 1.3% improvement. The second area that we can focus on is volume. And often with emerging CPGs, this is the critical aspect, thinking about how we can push on our brokers, how we can spend more with our customers to drive growth. Do we have the right sales coverage? If we're able to drive 1% of incremental volume growth, well, our gross revenue increases, our discounts stay at the same percentage. We've got to produce those products, so we've got a little bit more cost, but at the same percentage. Our fixed stays the same, but our profit margin improves to 19.9%, or we're making about 13.04, which is about a 1.8% improvement. Now, what's the last lever that we can pull on this financial statement to drive improvement? Price. And when you think about price, I don't necessarily want you to think about it only from taking a price increase. I want you to think about it from those other levers. Getting smarter on promotions, finding 1% in your promotions, thinking about your investments that you're putting into customers. If we're able to transition volume to more profitable SKUs, more profitable customers, more profitable regions, more profitable channels, if we're able to find 1% on that top line level, well, our price goes up to, we go up to 57.43 from 50 revenue per unit. What you'll find is that 1%, it drops to the bottom line. And I'm going to just jump to the bottom. Basically, you're realizing a 4.1% improvement. The thing to keep in mind is that you have much more impact from a 4.1. You're comparing it to that 1.3 and 1.8. But what you should be thinking about is, as you think about where you're making your investments on your time, your people, your dollars to drive the financial statement, often we find the time and effort put into managing that revenue management aspect, it's much less than the leverage that's coming out on that top line benefit. So where should we take this? I'm going to kind of fast forward to today. I spent a lot of time on industry side, and why is revenue management so important to me? Really quickly, fast forwarding to 2015, I was a revenue management director at AB InBev, running the team over there, and I was in a very comfortable position, kind of sitting with stock options, all the free beer that I wanted, and I had my first baby on the way. And I moved over to Revenue Management Labs, the organization I'm currently with now, that's totally focused on revenue management. So why did I do that? And just quickly summarizing what I've shown you. One, it's the most powerful lever on the financial statement. It's underutilized as a business process. They don't teach this in business school. It's not something that people are looking at. Often, knowing that there's a lot of founders that are on the phone right now, often we find the pricing strategies are dictated by the founders, or the trust is being put in the sales team to go and execute that. So it hasn't necessarily been thought of in an in-depth manner, but when you think of the scale and scope that it can have on the financial statements, it's huge. And the last item was, I had worked with my days in industry with BCGs and McKinseys, and and on revenue management engagements, where it was really falling down was me sitting on the other side of the desk. They were delivering me these great decks that were really well thought out, and they were telling me, hey, you can make this huge amount of money. Where we were falling apart was as we moved to implementation, as I moved to translating this down into customer level, by SKU, by week, for promotions, thinking about how we should think about net unit costs, how we set up our rebate structure, how we think about setting up the calendar. A lot of the stuff wasn't possible. And whereas they were telling me, hey, you got an upside of X, I was ending up at 5% of X. And that's where we're really the work that Revenue Management Labs works on, in that knowing this is a process. You need to work on it. This is muscle that you need to build in your organization. Even though you might not have someone dedicated to it, it's a process that you need to spend some time to focus through it. And it's all about ROI. This isn't something like, hey guys, what if we put a commercial out there, or we do some above the line, or we do some social media activation? It is very clear the cause and effect. If you change these prices, you can very clearly see whether it's working or not and how it rolls through that financial statement. So there is very much a real ROI and delivering that through to execution. Now, I know I've thrown a ton of information at you, and you're probably kind of balancing in your head. There is a lot here, and it's tough. And I want to walk you through a couple of things that I want to preempt you a little bit and think about what might be going through your head. Well, one, this is only for big companies. Big companies need to figure this out, and we'll kind of follow them. Looking at that financial statement, how much 1% can swing around your profitability, it's massive. And knowing how many dollars are generated there and whether you reinvest those dollars to continue to grow your brands, to reach new customers, to enable different things, you can't afford not to care on what's happening from a revenue management perspective or managing that actively. Next element that we hear is, you know what, it's too expensive. We don't want to make this an investment. We can kind of keep on chugging along. If you're doing revenue management right, it pays for itself. Pricing, as you saw, it's something that has such leverage on your financial statements. This is not something where you're investing in year one and you're looking for the payback kind of year 2, year 3. This is kind of should be lightning for you if you're doing it properly. You go get the insights, you implement it with customers. Within 12 months of implementation, you should be having ROIs anywhere from 3 times to 8 times over what you're investing in. One of the other items that we sometimes hear, and this is relevant in emerging brands, is that we are really dressing ourselves up for sale. We don't necessarily want to have any risk on our top line. So there's kind of 2 things here that come into play. One, and I use this adage a lot, you can't bank share. At some point, you need to make money and make sure that it's sustainable. But at the same time, if you're doing your revenue management right, there are ways that you build both your top and bottom line at the same time. And if you are making decisions to build the top line at the expense of the bottom line, you at least know the trade-offs. So you can understand what those costs are and how much revenue is coming along for those costs, so you can at least make smarter choices on how you want to go about it and how you want to drive it through. And then the last element is, we don't have the data, we don't have the system. And this is really where solutions like Promomash come in, right? That give you the ability to access that data, access that granularity, so you can start to make much smarter decisions on how you're going to market, how you're positioning yourselves, and coming up with a much clearer process of getting into that customer's mindset, making sure all of the elements of your offer are in line. So I know I've thrown a ton of information at you. You're probably bouncing around in your head right now. How do we think about our pricing and positioning our price? How do we think about ourselves versus competition? Does it make sense? Do I even know the ROI of certain activities? I know we approved a rebate the other day to get into a certain store chain that was at 4%, and it was these number of stores. Am I even going to break it? Would that have made more sense than me running an additional paying placement in Publix instead and going after and getting that? What we're offering to the team today, one-time opportunity, is we'd be happy to take 30 minutes, talk through where you are on a complimentary consultation, work through what you've done, where are your worry beads, where you think there's opportunity, and give you some ideas on what next steps would make sense where you probably have some high leverage to dig down, give you some ideas on analysis that would give you some ideas on where the quick hits are, and spend the time. If I've got my email up there on the screen, apunwasee@revenueml.com, you can feel free to reach out. We can coordinate a time. I know everyone's kind of shutting down for the holidays, but we could coordinate a time. Happy to take the time, talk about your unique situation, and give you some pointers where there could be leverage.
So notice in the chat, guys, that we've put Avy's email address. So I highly encourage you to reach out and contact him. Thank you very much for that sort of main part of our structure presentation. We can field a couple of questions now. If you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask Avy now live. I wanted to make a comment or ask one myself at the very least, and feel free either in the chat or the Q&A to post your questions, guys. So it sounds like this revenue management idea is a tool that, on balance, it just allows you to be more strategic. And I think back of our minds, we know that we're either always trying to increase our growth, our revenue growth, or our profitability, one of the two. And that's just a temperament thing. That's a where's the board at? What do they want to do? And this allows you to just sort of be conscious and cognizant as you go forward. So at what point, and I saw you make a shameless plug for Promomash in there. We didn't pay him for that, guys. But it raised a question for me, kind of like the sort of make or buy decision. Do I try to roll my own in-house, or do I just, like get some help, farm it out, get a consultant, get a pre-built system, or do I build the thing in Excel with a bunch of, hooks and wires and whatever, and hire a product manager, or, what does that decision matrix kind of look like, or at what point does it make sense to do one or the other?
Yeah, it's funny because we often get this question on with where I am, with what I'm doing. Where should I think about making the investments? How should I think about it? And a lot of people start with, I'm going to just go ahead and bring someone in. We'll figure out what we need.
Yeah.
What we like to do, and it was interesting, our earlier conversation, because I was talking to Chris about emerging brands and what they have available to them, and a lot of the Promomash attendees, would they have Nielsen data or IRI data or SPINS data available to them, or in some cases POS data available to them? Well, I know knowing a lot of you do have that data available to you. The second question is, how are you leveraging that data? So a lot of times what we find organizations kind of getting stuck in is they spend a lot of time trying to build in these homegrown solutions. And it's often the make versus buy. You could buy it much quicker and get the ROI out of it. And I think the thing that and I'm not trying to plug or anything like that, but I think the thing that you guys need to keep on coming back to is when you look at those financials, and if you're able to drive that 1% or 2% worth of price, and how much that drives to the bottom line, it starts to really justify, what we're already spending on our Nielsen data, yielding the insights around what we're doing from a promotional lift perspective. Or if we need a tool like Promomash so we can monitor what we're spending on what promotions, and be able to amalgamate that data together so we can start to make smarter decisions, it makes much more sense to move quickly. Because the other thing, especially as emerging brand, what we often get involved in is that as you set yourself up in the market and you establish a cadence of promotions with the retailer, or you establish a price point, the first thing you do as you expand to different products or you expand to different retailers, you set an anchor. And it's somewhat, if you got your blueprint kind of worked out, it's great, because you're just kind of filling out the board and things are evolving naturally. But usually that's not the case. It's more so, oh man, we're running this many promotions at Kroger. I can't pull back on that. The buyer won't let me pull back on that. So I need to do this here, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. It's too expensive. So it makes a lot more sense to invest in these sorts of things. And I think as you start to look at how much you're investing on cost savings and how much you're investing on building the volume, it gives a lot of credence to think about how much are we investing behind the revenue management and enabling revenue management with people, with systems, and those sorts of things.
You know, I've only been doing this for about 30 years, and I'm just starting to realize a couple of things. And I think, you know, in this question of make or buy, or do I, you know, I'm sitting here in Captain Kirk's chair, you know, I've started my company, we're growing, we're doing this, and I'm kind of squeezed between a rock and a hard place, you know, and Kroger has me kind of over a barrel. They're making demands, and what do I do? And you kind of gotta, there's a lot of different things, both from perspective and from tools and then response, that you need to bring to bear in order to resolve the situation. You know, what we've been talking about, hey, what do we do promotion wise? Like, is this a good idea to do this promotion? And sussing it out and kind of doing a financial statement on a promotion that's in front of us. This is nothing about the baseline. It's up to you to establish with a great product and a great price point, and, you know, some experience and forethought, getting into, you know, any of the big banners and being able to carry on a great baseline business. Okay. From there, how do you dial it in? Then you need a whole another set of tools and expertise and everything. And you can learn that. You can realize that one thing is to realize that you need to do it, but another is to like learn how and become an expert. And, you know, you're kind of an expert on this subject. Why don't you say something about that?
I think the other thing that's kind of interesting that you say it, and it's all the over the barrel is a good analogy, because often we go in and companies almost feel like they're held hostage, right? They're telling me, I got a gun to my head, I got to do this. And what the discipline as well gives the organization is to start seeing the forest a little bit wider. Yes, there is this promotion at this retailer, but we also have these placement decisions or these listing decisions that we need to make. We also have these growth programs that we're thinking about. And it starts to help us think a bit more widely on how we're managing our brand, the investments that we're making in our brand. And it's not necessarily the company is going to live or die based on this one decision on how we're going through. And as you start to introduce the process and start to introduce thinking about what segments we're playing at, what's our positioning, it really starts to open up the mind of the organization. I know we haven't talked about it a lot, but this is very much a cross-functional discipline, in that it's not only finance, it's not only sales, it's not only marketing, it's everyone working together to look externally and making sure that you're executing that commercial plan that makes sense right across.
But you know, there's no, you can't have two captains on a ship, let alone five. So where does this belong? Where should it reside? Who should be the tip of the spear, the champion of the cross functionality?
Yeah, typically what we find is as organizations are in their infancy, it starts in finance, and finance is kind of, if this deal is not at this level, we are not doing this deal. And they're kind of dropping the hammer, and sales is seeing them as sales prevention.
A company.
Yeah, and that's kind of the sales prevention department. The other area in some emerging brands, what we find is that, you know what, we have a mandate that we are going to grow as fast as we can. The sales team has the leverage. As long as we are not negative, they have the leverage to price how they want to. And we kind of call that fox in the henhouse pricing, because obviously their incentives are going to be driving them to price in certain ways. Long term, where this should live is, and as we said, this is all about creating value, understanding what value you're delivering to the customer. Long term, this should be living under marketing, or product managers, with the caveat of the marketing team or the product managers need to be able to function cross-functionally in the organization and be commercially focused, but they should be in tune as they're creating the value for the customer and messaging this value and understanding where gaps exist. They should be able to help us on those more strategic elements, but be open to, if we got gaps today, we need to fill those gaps from a price and discount perspective.
Yeah. My experience has been that person's a very special person. It's kind of, if you're a CEO, you need to find somebody who's going to be a CEO someday. Somebody who's that curious, that passionate, that driven, that they're gonna get competent in all those areas so that they can then build those bridges and have some credibility with all the organizations. That said, we have a question from Nevzat Evik, who said, "What's the best way or tool to understand elasticity versus pricing?"
Fair. So as I think about the difference between elasticity and pricing, I see them as one somewhat the same, but as we think about elasticity, there's going to be two types of elasticity that you're dealing with. One is going to be your base price elasticity. So this is kind of your regular everyday price elasticity. If you move that price, what is the reaction going to be from a volume perspective? The next type of elasticity will be your promotional elasticity. And those are going to be two different and unique things.
Yeah.
And you want to have a gauge on both of those things. The second piece is, what's the best tool to go ahead and understand that? If you haven't really done any kind of one of the things that I try to first state is take steps in this, right, guys? If you haven't done any elasticity modeling or even looked at, hey, we ran this promotion, with my Nielsen data, what kind of volume uplift did I get versus what kind of price did I give back? I'm running that over a couple of scenarios to just see, ballpark. I think my promotional elasticity is in this level. And ballpark, we just moved our price up, or worst case scenario, the retailer just moved our price up from $2.99 to $3.30, and we didn't actually take a cost increase. Here's what my base price elasticity is. The first thing I will always say is take a kick to the can. Just do elasticity is easy to calculate, right? Change your price, change your volume. You divide the two, and you've got your elasticity number. Second level you can get to is starting to think about, as you have a process that you want to go through and how you're going to think about making those decisions, there's lots of tools out there that can help you drive that out in a more automated manner. But what's critical is thinking about, once you have that elasticity in place, what are the decisions you're going to make? And if you have a kick at the can elasticity right now, how does that tie into the decisions that you have made? Are you leaving money on the table? Were there some, because I think what you're going to find is you're going to find some activities made no sense whatsoever. And you'll say, you know what, these we don't even do anymore, guys. Don't even talk to me about it. I'm willing to invest my money in any other way that the retailer wants to invest. I'm just not going to run this again with them, but I'm okay to do something else.
Okay. We are 1 minute away from the official end of the webinar. We'd love to stay here and talk all day with you, but I think we have to take it offline in respect of your schedules. So we're going to end now. But again, feel free to reach out to Avy. His email address is in the chat, apunwasee@revenueml.com. And of course, most of you guys are Promomash clients, or we've been in conversations with you. If you have any questions that we can help with, of course, would always love to hear from you. I'm CAA@promomash.com, and so you can reach me there. Thank you very much for your attendance. Appreciate your time. Hope everything is great for you going forward. Stay safe. Hope your business fares well as your family and your health. Have a great holidays. Avy, thank you so much for your presentation, and we will catch you all next time.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
See ya.